I think you have a perfect meeting for that.
After 7 years of being a sit about water, now I just get to eat out just easier. Oh, bring the camera back.
I'm pinning. Should I also spotlight for everyone? I didn't pin. Okay. Yeah. I did. I recorded. Okay. I did it. Welcome back, online Sangha. We'll be starting in just a moment here. It'll be in the way.
Oh, that move.
Yeah, sure. How long did it take you to get here? From
Can you all hear me?
Thank you for your patience, online Sangha. We're still bringing just a few more chairs in the Zendo setting up here. We'll be starting in just a moment.
Hi, everybody. So I actually asked, I'm Shishin for those that don't know me. I actually asked Roshi, Robert, if I could introduce Shodo this morning because have a unique way of knowing. We have a unique way of knowing each other. I first met Shodo online. Today's the first day we've ever actually touched. In a program, a course program study group we were in studying Dogen, and from time to time she would mention this book that she was desperately working on. And I heard this for like a year and a half about how difficult this process was. And then finally she said, I sent it in, but I'm not happy with the edit, so I had to re-edit it myself. And then she said, it's finally in, and I saw the book cover, and wow. I said, you know, I might like to interview you for my Substack website, Zen Followers, which you can all see the interview. I put that's a Daigu kind of show. At any rate, and it turned out really well, the interview, because she really described the depth of the polycrisis and how she came to it. I think you did. And so when we think about the polycrisis today, we often just let it wipe over us, but we're in the midst of it, and I think this book and Shodo does a wonderful job of describing it. So I now consider Shodo a friend, and I'm happy to introduce Shodo to this lovely community that we have. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It occurs to me that if I get in trouble, I can ask you to ask me a question. So, I have done the Gate of Sweet Dew before, but this was like, it's like I feel like I'm reborn and everything is erased. And I'm starting new. It's just so beautiful. And looking at all these gorgeous robes, it's like, I don't know anybody who does robes like that. It's like, wow, boring. Wonderful, of course, but wow, nothing. So I'm just soaking in who you are.
Excuse me,
Yes.
excuse me, you need to move the microphone closer to you, please, so that we can hear you.
I'd like you to hear me. Can you hear me now? Is that better?
That's better, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Always interrupt if you can't hear me, or if I say something incomprehensible. It could be Zen jargon, or it could be some other kind of jargon, but please, interrupt, wave at me, do something. Okay, so the Polycrisis. So I finished this book before we had any idea that Donald Trump would be elected again. But I sold it after he was elected, and I got a publisher who was willing to rush it into print because so one gets important about one's own work. And this has gotten a little important to me. This is my contribution to freeing all beings, to freeing our culture. It started out with climate change, and so was my contribution to stopping civilized humans from destroying the living world that sustains us and is worthy in itself. And so it used to be about climate change, but by the time we were doing titles, it became polycrisis. Does anybody need the polycrisis definition? So, okay, I won't read it. Polycrisis means a lot of stuff is going wrong all at once. And they feed each other. So this thing makes that thing worse. And that other thing makes the other thing worse. So let's start with that. Meeting the polycrisis together with all beings. So you might recognize that phrase, together with all beings. It shows up in chants and things like. And so we're not stopping it. We're not attacking it. We're just meeting it as is our Zen practice. We're going to be there and we're going to see what happens. And we don't know the future, but we're going to be here. And so the title Open Reality suggests we don't know what's going to happen. We don't have to be in despair, even in so much. I think it's 10 years ago that some famous person said, if you're not worried about the state of the world, you're not paying attention. And then he said, if you're not excited about what's happening, you're not paying attention. Because I am paying attention both to too much news, but also to the upwelling of life and spirit and joy, the reclaiming of indigenous humans of their old ways. And it goes back to Standing Rock that non-native people are taking leadership. There is some understanding now that we're not in charge, and not being in charge is a lot of what this book is about. So now I'm totally off my outline, and I'll just keep talking. I used to admire Ivan Illich a lot. How many people know that name? Ivan Illich. Yeah, right. So he was that radical guy somewhere in Latin America. And he wrote a lot of stuff, and he refused to ever be on television because the medium was itself a problem. And one of the things he said, let's see, there we go. Neither revolution nor reformation can ultimately change a society. Rather, you must tell a new, powerful tale, one so persuasive that it sweeps away the old myths and becomes the preferred story. One so inclusive that it gathers all the bits of our past and our present into a coherent whole, one that even shines some light into the future so that we can take the next step. If you want to change a society, then you have to tell an alternative story. So I have a story, and I have, it's like hubris rises forever. But so do humility and shame. And it was Marianne Williamson who wrote a beautiful thing, who are we to think we're beautiful, magnificent? How dare we think we're not? So, so this is a step out of a long habit. I mean, I've been working my way there, of course, and Zen practice has been essential. So the new story that I'm offering is basically interdependent co-arising. And so I'll start with that. Well, let me outline first. So it's help me stay with it. So there's the story, interdependent arising, how life really is as opposed to how they tell us it is. And I have some sort of poetic stuff in here that I may or may not read bits of. And then I looked at how we got to the place we are, and I did, it's sort of like a survey or an outline of the past 500 to 1,000 years. And I did some naming, and I read some wonderful archaeology and anthropology about how humans are. It's like we grew up in a so-called Christian country, and the idea that human nature is fundamentally evil and we have to be rescued. And I am making a big claim that human nature is not the problem. We have a story that's a problem, and the story is that we're supreme. And once around the Renaissance, once they ditched the supreme God, then we had to be our own gods. This just does not work. It is working out very badly. And they keep pushing harder in the same direction. Okay, so one of the stories, there's how life really is. There's what humans really are. And then there's, what's the next step? So I would say in about the last third of the book, I'm trying to offer possibilities for next steps. So, I'm remembering, I live on, you might say, a small farm, anyway, a bit of land that could be farmed. I thought I was going to farm it, but something else happened. And my mind just went blank. I caught myself one day. Well, I was hiring helpers, not paying them enough, but anyway, I was getting casual labor to help me start with the land. And one day I was pulling weeds. And Justin, who was helping me, said from the other side of the field, "Those are really strong over here." And I just kind of looked at him, oh. And he said, "They talk to each other." I went, it was very quickly obvious. It's like pulling up weeds is not a good plan. They'll just pop up somewhere else because they talk to each other. They're intelligent. and if you abuse them, they'll fight back. Um, Justin grew up on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and his parents were the people who took care of the Wounded Knee Massacre site. He said they would be a little harsh on the tourists. And once there was this group and there was a discussion about spirituality, and I was just like jaw-dropping over it. You know, I have 40 years of Zen training. I kind of think I know something about spirituality. Oh, grew up traditionally. Okay, so let me see. Okay, so that's like 3 parts in the book, and I won't give most of my time to some of them, because I've given up trying to give the whole book. I'm trying to give a hint. Okay, so we have that thing from Ivan Illich about telling their story. There's another thing from him, is I was looking for stuff, like I actively go to the library, get everything that he ever wrote, and start reading. And one of the other things that I found was about a self. He said, before writing, there was people didn't have a self. A self would appear in order to tell a story, and then it would go away. But now we think we have a permanent self. There's other documentation of the damage done by writing, by the way. There's somehow always a connection with increased violence whenever there's a new advance in writing. The printing press preceded the witch burnings. Just for one of several examples. Anyway, so now we think we have selves, we think they should be permanent, and we want to protect them. And it's pretty hard to interrupt this. It's really hard to interrupt this. I'm trying to tell a story that says, wouldn't it be nicer the other way? I was once in a transition town group, and we were trying to tell the story that life would be better if we were a little less attached to our stuff, and that we could get together as a community and live differently. And I remember being accused by somebody who should have known better of making up a problem in order to justify this new world that we were proposing. I had told the story about the Hinckley fire. Oh dear, I'm going way off script. So in Minnesota, there was a great event a little after 1900 due to bad timber practices. So there was a lot of stuff, and then a fire started and there were big winds. And the whole town of Hinckley was burned to the ground. So were some others. And the noble story about this is a train that was on its way to Duluth, and they stopped and picked up people who were trying to get out. People who didn't get out all died. But there's a story of when this train stopped in Sandstone and went and said, "Get on the train." And people would not get on the train. People smelled like smoke. They would not get on the train, and Sandstone died too. Of course, there is a Sandstone and there is a Hinckley, but I had told that story. People don't want to hear that there's a problem. You might know that there are people who don't want to think about it. So last night I was staying with a new friend in Pilsen, and she had some friends over who are citizens, fortunately. They're from Mexico. And we're having this conversation about people deciding whether to leave or whether to stay. And the conversation about why there's nobody on the streets because they're afraid. And of course, it's just 2 nights ago that ice destroyed that apartment building and left people for hours. And
Excuse me, we should say where Wendy lives. Where Wendy lives.
oh, yeah, at Pilsen. Wendy lives in Pilsen.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right, yeah. But, so we're talking about this, and I hear online that the rest of the country isn't knowing about this apartment building. But we're in times, well, as a white American, I can't imagine it. Native Americans have no problem, the people in Gaza have no problem, it's happening faster there. So we don't know what's gonna happen next. That's polycrisis. And when I wrote this book, I couldn't imagine it was gonna get that bad. So what do we do? Oh, let me go a little bit to the nature of reality. This is titled Live by All Beings. Everything lives us. Everything breathes us into life. Everything witnesses us into being. And we in turn live, breathe, and witness them into existence. In Buddhism, this is called interdependent co-arising. Things arise and things fall, dependent on each other, linked together irrevocably. We are neither separate nor permanent, but completely embedded in the web of life, with a spark of awareness in this individual being as in other individual beings. We look out at each other and we recognize each other. Our mutual seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensing is how we create each other. And this is not limited to humans. Well, then I wrote about matter as being concentrated consciousness. So when I studied physics a really long time ago, it's matter is concentrated energy. We think it's all consciousness. Now the teachings tell us that. Everything is mind. It's like, oh, what does that really mean? One of the things it means is that there's consciousness in here and here and here. And we as humans, or we as whatever group of humans we think is the best, we're not the only ones here. We're not the only ones with power and agency. And our people have trashed the place. Some people in certain subgroups are exempt from that. You know, my people are totally not exempt from it. So my proposal is that we get over it and join the family, and that we ask for help. Asking for help was the big mission in this book. Get together. Of course, in order to ask for help, you have to learn respect. You have to give up the idea that you're the important one. And you have to recognize that there are lots of others and everybody's important. If you've ever read Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, he does a lovely job of discussing this and spelling out how crazy it is to think the way our people think. And I try, it's like I'm kind of following him, but I footnoted. He called it a novel. I have footnotes. Okay. Oh, I have a hummingbird story. And last night, I learned that the hummingbird is the sacred bird. It belongs to one direction, I forget which direction, of certain people in Mexico that I was having dinner with. And he had read the book. And he said, I'd like that hummingbird story. So, and this story has gotten around. If I can't find it, I'll just tell it. Okay. So there was a huge fire in the jungle. And all the animals were running for the river or running to escape the fire. And the jaguar was running. And then the jaguar noticed the hummingbird. going the other way. And the jaguar says to the hummingbird, "What are you doing? Why are you going the wrong way?" And the hummingbird says, "I'm bringing water to the fire." And the jaguar says, "You're crazy. You can't do that. You're too little. All you can do is, one drop at a time and then this long trip." And the hummingbird says, "But I have to. It's what I have to do." And the hummingbird keeps going back and forth, one drop at a time. Now, there are different versions of the story. In one version, the great spirits heard the hummingbird and they brought a big rainstorm and solved the whole problem. But there are versions of the story in which the hummingbird just keeps doing what she or he is doing. And so what I learned last night from Isaiah is that the hummingbird is sacred. Hummingbird means heart, and some other stories that I can't quite recall well enough to tell. But the heart does this. And so we have this story, and we have people now. Back in Vietnam days, there was a monk who did self-immolation. And I later learned that there's actually a very old Buddhist tradition of making yourself into a burnt offering. And I read several stories, most of them in China, and I was like, really? Okay. But that monk, he wasn't just being dramatic, he was making an offering of himself. And Thich Nhat Hanh was one of his students. Maybe, I don't know, he's in that tradition. And there were then a bunch of other monks who did the same thing. And Thich Nhat Hanh was in this group of people doing social work and came out of the fire. I mean, all of his partners were killed by whoever. And he survived to carry teachings, and you know what comes out of that? I don't know what's going to come out of our current flames. I've met some amazing people. I met one or two last night. But we're in the flames, we're being transformed, and we just make like the hummingbird and see what, take one step, we do that. I don't know what time it is. So good, I can wind down. So I had this vision. I mean, the vision happened after an event. So I was new at the land, and I had access to 20-some acres that were woods. I could roam there. I could go look at the river. And then somebody, the 25 acres just to the north of me came up for sale. And I tried to find somebody to buy it, but it didn't work. But during that process, I learned that there could be a building site on that land, and that there was nothing that I as a neighbor could do to stop it. If it met the requirements for putting in a septic tank, they could build a house, and they could build a magnificent, huge house. They could cut down the trees, they could make lawns. I went into despair. And at the time, I was in the habit of doing 5-day sashimi every month, which is the tradition of my lineage. On the last day of sashimi, and somebody suggested this, I didn't think of it, but on the last day of sashimi, about noon, I changed and went outdoors, changed clothes and went outdoors, and walk through those woods, just asking them to protect themselves. And I'm not a person who sees visions or hears voices, almost never. But I could feel that something was happening, and I could feel that they were responding to it. And I was like, talk to the trees, talk to the bushes, talk to the buckthorn, talk to the creek, talk to the dirt, talk to this, all this stuff, and just asking them to protect themselves. And I felt like there was a response. And I went home and I was able to sleep. And something like a year and a half later, I looked at a zoning map and I discovered that something had changed. And then I forgot about it for a while. There are people now who have a building site cleared. They might move in. So I think the spirits tricked me. But now I'm really planted there. And so I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna do one step at a time. But that thing of asking for help, it's like I have a couple of stories. I know lots of people with lots of stories. I put some of them in the book, I put them in the bibliography. There are some amazing stories of people who have been helped by plants. Sometimes animals, sometimes rocks. The sun, somewhere, they're famous for walking on fire, but they don't do it to get high or to prove something. They do it because it's a method of healing. Anyway, so this anthropologist went and visited them, and they learned that he couldn't hear the stars sing, and they felt so sorry for him. So I'm working on hearing the stars sing, and I had some support in doing that. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, I don't hear them sing, but they feel really alive. You pay attention to things, you feel how alive they are. My proposal, I named an organization Mountains and Waters Alliance.
You said,
Mountains and Waters Alliance. And my concept was that human beings would humbly come and ask for help from all the other beings, the rocks, the grains of sand, the river and the creek, the stars, that we would ask for help from everyone around us, and we would hopefully get together in person and do this. It's like, you get people around the world together on Zoom, and it's pretty intense, but I'd rather have people around the world in a little group on a piece of earth. So there it is. And I keep being encouraged. I keep meeting people who are already doing it. I was noticing the dedication in your service, and it's like, oh yeah, we match. My dedication is vaguely like that. So, let's see. Oh, okay. Joanna Macy offered 3 paths or 3 methods, and I see some nods. But the first one was to stop the damage, and there are people out there doing that, and it's dramatic and dangerous. And so living in Minnesota, I'm constantly having the news from up north, which is where most of the damage is happening. Now they want to put a data center 4 miles from my house. And everywhere else, all, data centers everywhere, because it's really important to have a better police state. Not everybody feels that way, but I'm like, no, we were fine in the 1950s. Well, some of us were. Before cell phones, before the internet, I like the internet. But, humans can live well without the machines. And machines are destroying the earth. They're destroying life on earth. The rocks will still be there. And so I get a little, my attachment goes there mostly. I have personal attachment. people who live with me know about them. But that, it's like, oh. And sure, eventually the human species will die out because every species dies out eventually. I'm just opposed to the level of suffering that we seem to be causing in doing that. You know, I'd rather have a meteor strike and be done with it. I don't want my children, and now it's my grandchildren, and everybody else's, I mean, the little ones who are grown up. So I'm clinging to that, and rather than lecturing myself about the clinging, I'm saying, well, let's do something. So let's do something, let's get together, let's recognize who we are. Okay, I'm gonna read this piece, which is actually the opening of the book. Our bodies are water, moving with the ocean tides. Our bodies are matter, hungering for the feel of the earth underfoot. Each is a cousin of the microbes in the soil and a relative of the burr oaks up the hill. I write not about the 60% of the human body composed of molecules of water, but of water that moves in the air, flows in and out, rises and swells like ocean tides, flows from high places to low, bubbles over rocks, thunders down from the sky, carves a new path through the soft earth and even through rock. That water is our birth, our home. Humans have known forever that we are small in a large universe. Only modern humans have imagined ourselves as gods, all-powerful, and only with this fantasy have humans come to the edge of destroying life on Earth. What if there were another way to live? Embedded in a world of living, conscious, sacred beings. What if that were the way to save ourselves? This body belongs here. The winds blow through, the tides move. The earth holds, and some spark of awareness makes its home in this one body called mine. In these bodies we call ours. So, lots of people are talking about what's wrong, and lots of people are talking about how we can solve it. And so I didn't write anything that was already covered. But I'm trying to offer a feeling for how we might move forward together. So I will pause there and invite questions or comments, or whatever. Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you because microphone.
Oops, microphone.
This one down. We can share this.
Oh.
Thank you. Here you go. Dagu.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you. First of all, it's a beautiful talk, and it's a subject that we've been exposed to because of Roshi for a while now. But when you initially brought up and started your talk with interdependent co-arising, it struck something that I had been thinking about in the Polycrisis, which is, yes, there's a lot of things going on that are in a bad place, obviously, but my feeling is it is to be expected because everything that we're learning about interdependent co-arising is I'm here because jury is here and jury's here because, so the problems would follow that same pattern as would the response. And for me, you know, I've sort of been able to, my contribution to my Bodhisattva vows is actually what Shishin was teasing me about, which is the more people in here as the marketing circle steward, the more I'm like, okay, I'm doing something meaningful.
Yeah.
And even if I get yelled at a lot during the marketing meetings, but whatever. But I just wanted to thank you and get your thoughts on sort of the inevitability of interdependent co-arising in the Polycrisis.
Well, I was just going to thank you because that was lovely.
Nothing about that easy.
Yeah, so I see people they tend to be kind of new agey, but there's some Buddhists doing it too. That are just going like, don't look there, don't look there. That's not happening. It will all help solve itself. And it's like, no, look there. Because that creates me. You know, I'm constantly aware of, oh, there's Donald Trump and who are all those other guys? You know, the ones that are worse than him. And it's like I live in this world, and so my being allows that existence. Now, if I were not so totally physically safe and privileged, you know, I could be living in a world where I lost my house, or where I didn't know where I was going to get something to eat, or whether I was getting beat up. And that, you know, everybody does what they do. The beautiful poetry coming out of Palestine these days. The beautiful responses, like from unions in Italy lately, and 2 countries sending naval ships. Apparently they didn't choose to stop the Israelis. What happened to those high-powered military ships? They chose not to start the next World War, I guess. But it's all kind of scary, and we don't know what they're thinking, and it's like, can I put myself in the place of that person? But, so I'm in this place, and I'm of this age with this body, and I live in that, but I had the ability, I have my little car, and so I chose to travel a little bit, and so everything, it's like our response is created by the whole mess, you know? And I'm a little envious of somebody I know who retired to spend time with her grandchildren. I really am. And my kids know they're not in favor of my getting arrested, but they understand how, I think they understand how I think about it, should that look like the next thing to do. So, is that, ask more if that wasn't, okay, thanks.
Over here in the Zendo.
Oh, hello. I wanted to thank you, and I feel that your talk, it resonated with me so deeply. I too care for a bit of land. I would like to know what river you're on. I have a couple questions.
Oh, I'm on the canon.
Okay. All right. Thank you. The hummingbird story, I heard a different version from some Potawatomi people.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, what is their story?
And in that story, same story, big fire, only it wasn't the jungle, it was the North Woods. But it was a river. Mm-hmm. And it was bear and some other animals who were gossiping about the hummingbird. And some of them went up to the Great Spirit and said, "Oh, Great Spirit, this silly old hummingbird, she's just taking up a little bit of water every time." And the Great Spirit said, "And what are you doing to help?"
Yeah.
She's doing what she should be.
Yeah.
So that's the version I heard. It was at a climate change conference in a forest preserve.
I'm curious. Okay, what was the second question?
Okay, so wait, let me think about the other question. Anyway, so I just wanted to thank you so much because it was just so beautiful. Let's see, other question. Nope, I think that's the. Oh yes, weeds really do talk to each other. I've learned that.
How did you learn it?
Because I help with the forest preserve, but I also am making a little nature preserve in my garden. And I've been learning how to, I mean, this has been going on for 30 years, I should say, but how to coexist with weeds and maybe work around them a little bit. So I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Thanks you. Yeah. And so I'm working, it's like I'm trying to remember to talk to them and to ask permission before I do stuff. And that feels a little better. Well, right, yeah, but we have to talk to them. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
Sam?
I'm famously long-winded, so I'll try my best. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you so much for coming and offering your sagely talk. That was really great. I think that's probably one of the best things about the Zen Center is we get so many wonderful guests, and thank you for sharing with us. But yeah, I guess with regards to the polycrisis, like part of my practice is trying to bear witness as best as I can so that I'm aware, but also sort of trying to be like militantly optimistic in a way, like just do like everything I can to sort of view things. I don't know if I say solvable, but addressable. I don't know.
So, there's an important thing there. It's like solving is a kind of cognitive thing, or it's a fixing. It's like we need to go into that other world and let everything create everything.
Right.
And then we do not know what will happen.
Yeah.
Like not knowing whether you're going to live or die is really important. And I watch journalists in Gaza, and it's like, they know they're going to get killed. They just don't know when.
Right.
And they keep doing it, they don't stop.
Yeah. But yeah, something about, I think, the nature of our crisis that we're in. I think about the crises we've been in the prior generations and other centuries. Like thinking about the like French Revolution and just how feudalism gave way to democracy. But like the successive years of just these like dominoes knocking over across the world of this sort of rippling effect of the structures. I think the system or the people and everything in it gets to a point where the structure can no longer sustain this sort of change, and it gives way in this kind of conflict to things falling apart. It's kind of like building a tower, and you built the tower to be 10 stories high, but every year you're trying to put another story on top, and eventually the foundation, you didn't build it to be 20 stories tall, so it all comes down, and either you can skillfully do it or you can have the whole building come down, and by learning that. But thinking about the climate crisis, I wonder about what it means to answer the crisis and what that would mean. What would it mean to know, as a species, our relationship to nature and the living world and the rest of things, and answering that problem? And that this, the definition of unsustainable is it can't be sustained. So we must do something or we die. And so to answer that crisis, what would a world where we know about how to live with, in harmony with nature or even facilitate nature, what would that world after look like? So,
Respond.
go ahead, sorry.
So I live in a place with lots of small farmers. Have you heard of, permaculture? Do you know regenerative agriculture? So I'm surrounded by people who are taking that responsibility very literally. And one of them, Reiki Haslet Marquin, came from Guatemala. He teaches people to farm chickens the way he learned to farm chickens when he was 8 years old. And it's wonderful for the chickens, except they do kill and eat them at the end, most of them. But there's this other thing that he's doing, which is creating a livelihood for Latino farmers so that they have someplace to go besides that monster industrial agriculture. And I did, I kind of knew this piece, and then once he was giving a talk and he said the other piece, oh, this person it's like he's turning a key somewhere, and he's teaching around the country and around the world. And I know he's not the only one. There are lots of people who are doing that. And it's like beyond sustainable, regenerative, because we have to undo the damage. And because I took a permaculture class, I know lots of stuff about how to undo the damage. And I know there are people who know 100 times as much as I do. So we just have to do it, And that's all the forces come up, try to stop us from doing it. And it's like, what is this? What is this? We're in a time of dying. It's like, I hope it's dying and being reborn. I hope it's like the chrysalis becomes a butterfly.
Back here. And then anyone online, feel free after this comment to unmute if you'd like.
I'm nervous, my first time, and I have a mic, so bear with me. But I genuinely have this question, something I struggle a lot with. I appreciate so much your acknowledgement of being privileged and safe, because I very much am, and by no means am I wealthy, and I worry about resources in a way, but I'm very privileged and safe. And I use
Skin color could get you. Sorry.
I'm pretty white, but
Yeah.
I used to have a lot of guilt around that,
Say
and
again?
I used to have a lot of guilt around that, and almost take on a victim identity because so many people are victimized.
Right.
And then I realized that's not helpful at all. Like, it just weighs me down, and I can't contribute as much.
Right.
And then I also, though, now witness other people who are very privileged in the same way I am, still taking on that like very victimized identity.
Yeah.
And to me, it looks like, I won't project my situation on them, but it just seems like they are being weighed down in it, and that like they're not able to have an open heart or be loving. And again, this is in some way a judgment. And I don't know what to say. And I almost wish there was something where I could share how my shift, I think, allows me to contribute more. Maybe I'm not always at a protest like angry, but I am doing a lot of things in my own way. And so, and there's a little bit of like, I want to shake you and like see, but I don't know what to say or do.
So I have lived with that guilt and felt stopped by it. And by the way, my ancestors are German. You want to see guilt? And I processed it as like, I read so much stuff about the Holocaust, and then I tried to understand Germans. But of course, the Germans did something different afterwards. They admitted what they had done. And the United States, we're still pointing over there about genocide, and what about our genocide, you know? It's just horrifying. Okay, so what do you do with the individual people who are still stuck in guilt and wallowing?
And feeling like a victim.
Oh, feeling like a victim because they're guilty?
I think perhaps they're different situations, but they seem somewhat similar in that both are very weighed down. So there's either like a tremendous amount of guilt or just feeling victimized because the collective is victimized. Like, they are not personally victimized, but they're taking on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the first thing to know is that we all create each other and everything is impermanent. I finally made peace with my parents before they died, right? I was in my 50s, so it's like everything changes. The second thing is that joy changes people. So if you are joyful and you're associating with them, you can introduce them one little bit at a time, I don't know. But so there's that. And the other thing is I have not too often been personally confronted by a person of color or a person of, from an oppressed group. Class, yeah. And in my family, I'm the poor one financially, but in the world, I'm like totally, safe. So, so I have, brought my upper middle class idiocy into places and gotten yelled at. And so sometimes people yell at someone in a way that can be heard. Because when, I'll just say white people, and as the random group, white people are always making themselves the center of things. And so if you find a person you think is more oppressed than you, and you apologize all over the place, you are still the center. And the thing is to get out of the center. And it is so hard to get out of the center. And it's a kind of a healing to get out of it. And I don't know. I'm not going to claim that I'm out of it, but I paid attention to it. And there's some of that stuff in the book too.
Anyone else online?
Oh, yeah. Anybody there?
Anyone else in the Zendo here? Oh yeah, up in front here, we have about 7-8 more minutes.
Oh, that was wonderful. One of the things that struck me as you were talking about, just one thing about the butterfly. So Joshin Burns says that it's a Jakarta story. So everybody says it's a different story, but it's, yes.
Jakarta? I don't know. Okay.
I didn't know it either. Everybody's got another way of looking at it, that's my
Yeah.
point. So one of the things that really struck me is that there are a lot of Buddhas in this world. Ivan Illich was a Buddha. Every person who's working hard at recognizing this polycrisis and trying to do something about it is a Buddha in my mind. And I think you really do a nice job if we sort of wake up to the fact that, oh yes, there are lots of Buddhas, and this book presents them. That's a great thing.
Oh, that's a good thought. Yeah.
Thank you.
Presenting as many stories as I can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so just one solid question here.
Yeah.
So you are Okamura Roshi's, you received transmission from him.
Yeah.
Do you think that his teachings contributed to how you looked this whole thing? And could you say something about that real quickly?
You know, I'm sure it did. It might be hard to say how. I know that I left San Francisco Zen Center to practice with him after, I sat a 5-day sesshin, and then I moved over to my belongings to Bloomington. So, I mean, I had known him before, so I knew something of his character. So certainly the practice of long sitting, it mattered enormously to me. The practice of going for residential tango, as I don't think I could have broken without that. It's like I had to be chopped up into little pieces or something like that. His teaching, so there's an interesting thing. He says he doesn't do activism, and of course he's here on a green card, so even if he wanted to, he would have to make some really different life choices. But he's surrounded by people who love his teaching, and I love his teaching. I trust his translations. And it's like, he'll say this thing, and I go, oh. And so I can't name how. I just know that there was something, and it was hard being in Bloomington, you know? I worked this crummy job, and, you know, everything, I was always at the Zendo. I used to count how many hours I was spending either at or working for the Zen Center. So it was hard, and he was so straightforward. Oh, and one of the things, so we had some trouble in the Sangha and some arguments and complaints. And he said, well, I'm responsible for this. And he took off his brown robe for a while. And he stopped giving lectures. And after a couple of months, and we had meetings, of course. After a couple of months, people went after him and said, you know, people want the teacher. And so we did a ceremony, and he started teaching again. But that purity of just saying, okay, I'm responsible, is just mind-blowing.
Deep into you.
Yeah, he was, it's like he would just do what needed to be done. And whatever, I never got a personal response out of him about pretty much anything. But then I would praise him about X, and then he wouldn't do it anymore. So I learned, if you say that, you won't get that. But yeah, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I just, in regards to what you were saying about safety, everything, we're living in impermanence. And everything is always changing. And so I believe that a feeling of safety in the political situation might be impermanent, even for white people, different groups of white people. And I also believe that safety is a construct, maybe? So if you're resting in, I'm working on this, like as I'm talking. As you're sitting in meditation and you get that feeling, you know, that boundless feeling, like I was having this morning. It's like after some difficult feelings. That's a different kind of safety. And maybe that's a safety that's rooted in, and you can't even say rooted, you have to say it's in the flux of co-origination. Anyway, it's just coming to me right now. And so that just seems important in this time of real physical unsafety. And maybe that's what you were saying about Thich Nhat Hanh. He came out of it.
Yeah, he came out of it, and then what he had, boom, you know, he gave it to us all. And he changed something about the world because of his life and his work. And we all know other people who did that too. I'm gonna say two things, and that's not to say no more questions, but it feels like we're getting there. So one of the things is that, so I have these books and they're $20. I have more of them in the car, and I also have discount books for $10. You have to be careful when you buy books through a publisher. And so the ones you bought online aren't messed up. The ones that are $10, they have missing punctuation. And so it's like you can still read them. It's all there on the computer. Wait, what's going on there? And I made one correction personally in every copy, but I could not make 100 corrections personally in every copy. So they're $10. And I have lots of books. And I'm happy to sign them. So that was one of my things I wanted to, because we just put out the good ones here, and I can get more. Should it be like that? And the other thing is, so I have this place, I refer to it as a farm. It's, I don't know if it's 8 hours away or 6 hours away. Anyway, sometimes I'm still looking for people to actually live with me and do some kind of practice together, of which you get the shape of it because you heard me talk now. And sometimes people come for retreats. Now, it's not very efficient for a whole crowd of people to go that far, but there is the land, so it's like, and sometimes people come and stay for 3 months or something like that. I usually need something that looks like money. But anyway, so there's, just make that opening. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Shodo, so much for being here. Thank you to our online Sangha for joining us this morning. Please, as you're able, meet us in the community room for snacks and fellowship. And all of you from wherever you are, have a beautiful, beautiful Sunday. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
a religion or faith or tradition prior to being saved?
Well, I was raised in